yesterday about Changya Rukh or Bama or by Sangati by Bama. Have you read anything? Because yesterday we were discussing the fiction, right? We have discussed two autobiographical accounts of Balbir Madhupuri and one about Bama, right? And today we will be talking about drama and poetry, right? First, I'll be starting with the drama, then we'll discuss two short stories, and then we'll discuss two poems further, right? The one, The Naked Truth, and other for the Feastful of Self-Respect, right? First, I'll be starting with the theater, right? The Dalit theater, the connotations of, the Ambedkarite idea of tamasha, and how by portraying the Dalit concerns, you can raise the Dalit consciousness by the way of theater, right? So first, I'll be starting with the text, that is Roots and Escape Routes by the Tabhagat, right? So in the story, Datta Bhagat was a Marathi writer, Marathi, and as we know it very well that the movement, the Dalit movements, all the Dalit consciousness, when we talking about Dalit Panther or any of the Dalit literary tradition or the political movements or organizations, they all sprung up from the Maharashtra itself, because Dr. B.R. Ambedkar belonged to Maharashtra, and especially the caste Mahar, right? And the same way, Datta Bhagat is also a Marathi writer, and today we will be discussing a play, Roots and Escape Routes. And in Marathi, it means Vata or Palvata, right? Vata means the distance, and the route, it can be a way. On the other hand, Palvata means it can be a kind of a shortcut, right? The literal translation is escape routes. So this escape routes can be a retreat, it can be an escape, or it can be a shortcut as well, right? So before starting the play, let me just give you few things about the Ambedkarite Dalit theater, right? Because of the springing movements of Dalits, right? The whole different theater was formed by Dalits in Maharashtra, and different kinds of plays, basically the tamasha plays, right? That was actually aimed to raise the consciousness of the Dalits, right? So the very realistic plays were portrayed there, right? So they were not telling these mythological stories of Vedas and Puranas, or not, they are giving the ideal world, but on the other hand, in those theaters, on those stages, the very real life incidents were portrayed, right? So Roots and Escape Routes is also a kind of such an example. And here we have very few characters, because it is you real life incident, so you cannot overcrowd the characters, because by putting so many characters, it will lose, first of all, the realistic contact, and second, the emotional contact as well, right? The audience will be meddling over the characters, that who is what and to what relation he has with that person. So there, in that particular setting, there will be very few characters, right? So before jumping into the story, let me introduce to the characters, right? And you have to be very much particular, and you have to analyze that what kind of a route that character will follow. And by his or her course of events, you'll get to know about his or her routes, and about, even at the same time, the escape routes. For example, if they are having a shortcut, on the other hand, they are happily ignoring the issues of the Dalits, or they are portraying it vehemently, right? So basically we have two characters, a couple, that is Satish and Hema, right? The story revolves around these two people, Satish and Hema. So Satish is basically a professor in a college, and on the other hand, Hema is a housewife. So Satish is a Dalit and Hema is a Brahmin. So from the from the relationship, and from the caste distinctions, it is very obvious that they had a love marriage, right? Because of the love marriage, because a girl is from the upper caste and the boy is from the lower caste, so they must have fight against all the odds of the society and the family and other other barriers. They crossed all the barriers, you could say, the, as Shakespeare says, the love crossed lovers, right? So they are the love crossed lovers, right? So the who are crossing the roads, on the name of love, they are actually breaking the barriers, right? So where we have Satish and Hema. So Satish is a professor, and on the other hand, Hema is a housewife, and their marriage is definitely love based. On the other hand, then we have three more males, right? Those who are actually belonging to the same community, the Dalit community, will get to know that what kind of a relationship Satish and Hema share, and what kind of a relationship these three people will share with this Satish, and what kind of a relationship they share with the Hema as well, because she belongs to an upper caste as she is a Brahmin, right? So the whole family was actually the Godghates. Godghates is a very, a popular, popular community of Dalits, right? So Godghates, and then we have three people. First is the Kaka, who is actually Satish's Kaka, and second is Dasrao, right? Dasrao is actually the contemporary of Kaka. But on the other hand, the very much difference between these two is the as same as, because Kaka belongs, as he is the uncle of Satish, so he too is the Dalit. But on the other hand, Desrao, Rao is actually, a Brahmin surname, so he is a Brahmin. But on the other hand, Desh Rao is a person who is actually, who is actually a spokesperson of equality, right? Though he is a Brahmin, but he truly, he truly discarded the all the privileges that is bestowed on the caste system, and on the other hand, he is actually supporting the idea of equality, right? So this was the reason they are friends, and they are having a close connections with the Satish as well. And then we have a very a young man named Arjun. So on the other hand, Arjun is a complete radical, right? He is a student in the college, and on the other hand, he is also a leader of the community, right? So this leader of the student community, you could say. So here you have three people, and a couple, we have Satish and Hema. Then the first thing that it is very obvious that Satish and Hema are free from the prejudices of the caste, right? Because their marriage is totally based on love. So there is no question of any casteist mindset between these two, right? Satish is very much clear about his idea of equality. That is why he loves Hema, and he married her. On the other hand, same goes with Hema, though she is a Brahmin, but he married with Satish, because she is free from all the prejudices and all the all the casteist mindset. So this is the reason they are here living in a very utopian society, right? So they are actually offering a hope. So on the other hand, this contemporary play, Roots and Escape Roots, is actually a contemporary example of the India. So where you can actually think of an intercaste marriage, right? And that to an intercaste marriage between a Brahmin and a Dalit, right? So Brahmin and a Dalit, a person, two people who belong to complete different world, complete different classes, complete different castes, and yet they are living in a love, they are actually having a love relationship, right? So definitely it actually poses a hope in front of us, right? That such marriages are possible, and such marriages are happening, and the youth especially, they are free from the prejudices of caste, and caste, race and gender, and even class as well. So we can say that in the progressive India, because of the independence and because of the constitutional structure of India, so we are actually progressing towards a free India, a liberal India, and a progressive India, right? So their relationship is actually posing a hope in front of the you could say a reader or the audience, that they are actually, you could say they are actually the social reformers, right? So they are actually not even opposing a ray of hope, but on the other hand, in a way, they are actually acting as a social reformers as well, right? So for example, they are free from the societal norms and societal tradition and customs, right? Because when we talk about a complete casteist society, such marriages are beyond our imagination and fancy, right? So such kind of a relationship we have, Satish and Hema. On the other hand, there are few critics that criticize their relationship, because they believe that Satish was a professor, and this was the reason that Hema was there, right? So Hema's first thing, Hema is a housewife. Hema is not an independent woman, and the second thing is Satish is a professor, right? So Hema's obsession with the priestly duties, you could say teacher duty of Brahmin. So some critics even pose their relationship like that, but for a layman, for a simple reader, it actually poses a hope. And on the other hand, they are actually the social reformers. And then we have the three people. Let's talk about Kaka first, right? That is Satish's uncle. For throughout the novel, throughout the play, when you read or you see the novel in Marathi or in the English translation, you will see that Kaka is. There is hardly any name mention of the Kaka, and for whole of the play, Satish refers to his uncle as Kaka, right? So Kaka is a freedom fighter, basically a person who actually fought in the independence of the India. He forcefully, he actually ferociously, he fought in the freedom struggle, and after India got freedom, he is now uh, he's now very willingly participating in the Dalit movements, Dalit Emancipation Acts, Dalit for the freedom of the Dalit. So he is actually one of a very prominent figure of that time, a prominent figure of the Maharashtra, or you could say about the locality or about the city they are living in, right? So he's actively participant of the Dalit liberation movement. So Sushmita, I hope the structure is clear between Hema. We have discussed Satish, Hema, and
Yes, ma'am.
Kaka, right? So
Yes, ma'am.
before going ahead, I would like to know what kind of relationship do you think Kaka will share with Satish and Hema? Because we are seeing Satish and Hema as a couple. So what will be the Kaka's conception about this love cross? You could say such kind of a lovers or couple. What do you think?
Ma'am, as he belongs to a upper generation than Satish, and they used to believe that intercaste marriages are not good. So maybe I believe the relationship is not so good.
But on the other hand, I would like to ask that Hema is actually a Brahmin, so there can be a positive relationship between them as well, because she is a Brahmin. What do you think? Will Kaka, what will be the Kaka's point of view about their marriage?
Ma'am, there could be many things. Maybe when we think the kaka would may consider it a good this kind of relationship a good kind of relationship, because if you see in today's society, if the girl is of the upper caste, then the problem is not that much high. So maybe Kaka would share a good relationship with Hema.
Okay, okay. So there can be a lot of, a lot of, you could say, it can be a possibility of a lot of speculation and
Yes.
interpretation, and there is a much room for discussion and development. And then first of all, when we talking about Satish and Hema, so it is very much clear that they are the, love crossed people, the star crossed lovers that Shakespeare was, again and again talking about Romeo and Juliet, people living from two words, and there is not at all a single mention about Hema's family. So, like I have already introduced you about all the characters, almost all the characters. There will be minor two characters like Sonal and Shweta, and they all belong to the minor characters. So there was not even an inch of mention of Hema's parents and anybody that is related to Hema, right? The reason is quite obvious, right? Shishmita, that it could be because she is indulged in such a heinous act of intercaste marriage, that being a Brahmin, that she is actually marrying a Dalit boy, a Dalit, right, a Dalit professor even, right? So this would be the reason that it might be a possibility that Hema's parents and Hema's relatives and all the people that is that are somehow connected with the Hema, they have they have cut their cords with the Hema, right? So this would be the reason that there is no Brahmin point of view, right? Or you could say the Brahmin point of view mentioned on this place. So there is not any mention of Hema's parents or anybody who is related to Hema. And then we are talking about the Kaka, right? So first thing that is definitely there, that even Kaka was very much opposed of their marriage, right? Even Kaka is the one who is not wholeheartedly accepted them at the first sight, right? So when they got married, so it was actually in the play that after a lot of reluctance, right, he happily, or you could say half-heartedly, he accepted the couple, right? So it is a very common phenomena for Kaka, because the first obvious reason is Hema being the Brahmin girl, right? So he feels that that might be that, as every Indian patriarch's mindset is, that our boy got trapped by the girl, right? So our boy is a good man, a handsome fellow, somebody who is actually earning good money, right? He's a professor in the college. So it is a common phenomena, a common patriarch mindset, that a man is trapped by the woman, right? The woman is actually bewitched the man. So this would be the reason of Kaka, first of all, that she belongs to a Brahmin, right? Brahmin caste. And second thing, that Kaka, Kaka share the view that He doesn't approve Hema's existence or presence much because of the caste, the caste difference he has, right? So he might be feeling uncomfortable, right, in front of sitting a Brahmin girl and talking about the liberation of the Dalits and talking about the atrocities committed by the Brahmins, right? So if somebody, for example, you could say if a criminal is sitting in front of you, right, then how will you accuse that person, right? So the same way Kaka must be feeling that how he will be talking about the liberation of the Dalits and how he will be talking about the atrocities, or you could say the sufferings that are actually laden upon the Dalits and or lower caste people by the upper caste. So he might not be comfortable around the Hema. And on the other hand, it can be this point of view as well, that he might have used Hema to put to cast his frustration, right? So Hema might be used as a tool, right? So this would be the reason. So there are a few incidents that Kaka even tried, though he accepted the couple half-heartedly, you could say, but he never left a chance to taunt her or to ridicule her somehow, a very simple taunts. And the basic reason of his prejudice against Hema is that he felt that in somewhere in in his heart, he felt that as Satish is actually a good boy, a well-earning man, on the other hand somebody who actually reached to the ultimate status, right? For example, a boy, a Dalit boy who has risen up to be a professor, right? So in this way, Kaka feels that Hema is actually enjoying the place of a good Dalit woman, right? So Kaka feels that if a good Dalit woman or if a good Dalit girl, right, would be here, then she would be lucky. And on the other hand, Satish would be doing something for the benefit of the community, right? So by marrying a Dalit girl, by marrying in his own caste, it would be like Satish is actually doing something for the caste, something for the community, for what he has risen up to the status of, you could say, professor. I hope I'm clear, Sushmita.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, so this is
Yes.
the reason such kind of relationships or interrelationships Satish, Hema and Kaka share, right? So though he is not somebody who is totally opponent of the Hema's space and absence, right? He said that even there was a dialogue between Satish and the Kaka, where he actually says that Hema is very good girl. I have no problem of him being Brahmin. I just have a problem that a hair a Dalit girl or a Dalit woman, if she comes to this place, if she comes to live in this house, she would be more happy, right? So somewhere down the line, he felt that, say, Hema has snatched a Dalit girl's privilege, a Dalit girl's right, or any kind of a perks that a privilege that a Dalit girl would be having from the Satish, right? On the other hand, then we have Dasrao, right? So Dasrao, as I have already told you, Raos are Brahmins, and Dasrao is actually a Brahmin, and he is termed to be a Guruji, right? Whenever people are talking about Dasrao, so he is usually termed as Guruji because he is somebody who is actually of a progressive thought, right? He is not narrow-minded like the other Brahmins, but on the other hand, he is somebody who is always speaking about the equality. He is somebody who has actually risen up to the status, right, in order to speak for the rights of the Dalits. They held meetings in the drawing room of the Godghates, right? So they used to have meetings in the drawing room of Satish, right, where these people sit and they have discussions, they have discourses about the Dalit consciousness, how to talk about Dalits equality, their freedom, their liberation, what steps should be taken, what kind of a movement should be in the should be started, right, in order to free Dalits and in order to have their say in the system, right? So in this way, even Dasrao is also posing a kind of a hope to the audience, right? So where a Brahmin is actually talking about the rights of the Dalit, where the Brahmin is not a typical Brahmin, right, who is actually having the casteist mindset, who is actually responsible for victimizing or dehumanizing Dalits, but on the other hand, being a Brahmin, he is very compassionate and you could say he is very much friendly or empathetic to the Dalits, to Kaka or to Satish, and he is the one who is actually becoming the, you could say, the voice of the of the people who are actually, for whom his own caste is actually, they are silencing them. But on the other hand, instead of, supporting their own caste, he is actually becoming the voice of the other people, right? So the Srau's character is also, it offers a kind of a hope. Then we have the Arjun, right? So Arjun, as I already told you, he's a young man, right? A young man. So he is actually a student, and a leader of the Dalit community, or the student community, student Dalit community. So the kind of, you can yourself imagine that what kind of a image Arjun would be carrying, right? So you know it very well, being a leader, a leader, that he has to be radical, right? He cannot just be liberal and, be easygoing with the with the easygoing with the upper caste people, with the Brahmins or other people, right? He cannot use the sugar coated words to people, right? Then on the other, because being the leader, he has to be radical, right? Because if in any way he will become liberal, or he will share, secular ideas, or any kind of, liberal ideas, any kind of you could say balanced ideas, then he will be definitely disregarded by his people. On the other hand, people will discard him somehow by saying that he's changing sides, he's not our leader, our leader should be our leader, right? So such kind of a views that Arjun is having, he's totally radicalized, right? So he's already, so his actions, his words are always against more Brahmins rather than in the favor of the Dalits, right? So this is what we define a radical, right? So when your more and more energy is consumed in putting in putting against rather than for, right? You forgot the distinction, you forgot the line of against and for, right? So you are making efforts against, right, in order to, you could say, in order to defeat someone rather to win for your community, or rather to, make efforts for your community. So Arjun is such kind of a person, right? And then the whole story, the story was actually a small episode, though this is just a two act drama, right? So it doesn't have much. In first act there is just two scenes. I have already told you, first is all about Hema and Satish, then about Kaka, and then their whole of the discussion. And the second act is also just have three scenes. So all in all, this whole play is all about five scenes, right? So basically there is a small plot that during the as they are living in the Maharashtra. So there was a flood victims that time. So there comes a flood. So they are actually in the setting of the flood, right? So there comes a flood, and the victims of the flood victims are actually, running here and there. They are wandering, and they are actually, pleading the government to provide them shelter, right? So it's been a long time, right? So the whole story is set up in the flood, that, so it's been 6 months, 8 months, 6 to 8 months, that the flood victims are actually, wandering here and there in order to seek shelter, because their houses were destroyed by the floods, and government is actually, aggressively working to give them shelter, to give them, home, their nice home, or to give them shelter in the name of a colony, right? So there was a Milan colony, right, where there are few, you could say few rooms, or few homes, few compartments, or few lobbies are, are uh, are arranged for the flood victims. So what Arjun did here is, so Arjun is being the radical and being the, you could say, a student leader. So Arjun played a great role in this movement and a great role in this play, that he actually wanted that, because he is actually a leader of, his community, and being a student and being a radical student, he really want to assert his power and control. He really wants to assert his identity, to the people, to his people, to the upper caste, and even to the government. So what he did is, he actually wanted to, grab those houses that were actually designed for the flood victims. He really would want to grab those houses for their own people, right? So those who are living in the slums, those who are living in the huts, those who don't have the houses, he really wants to grab those houses. He really want to snatch those houses from the government to provide their people a shelter, right? So when we are talking on a very literal level, so the, you could say, the very effort of Arjun is, quite a laudable act, right? So he is actually, what anybody cannot, have the courage to do it. But on the other hand, he is somebody, right, being the radical, he really wants to assert control over the government. He really wants to assert his identity, and he really wants to have a say, have a home for his own people, his own community. But on the other hand, when we talk about, on a larger front, when we are talking about a metaphorical level, so when we talking about metaphorical level on the during the quest for identity of Arjun, then it can be totally seen that it thereby, he wants to be a hero, right? So such kind of a act, the violent act, what I would like to term, right? So definitely a violent act, because the homes, or you could say the shelter, was not provided for the Dalits. So it was actually provided for somebody who are already depressed, right? So depressed classes, the depressed people are the flood victims, right? Because they are equally at par with the Dalits, because right now they are in the pain and suffering, right? So they don't have the shelter. So there is nothing like that, that he is actually, the government is snatching the rights of the Dalits. But on the other hand, metaphorically, it is Arjun who is actually snatching the rights of the others, for his own community, and more maybe for his own benefit, that we'll get to know, right? And then uh, what Arjun, and we were talking about on the metaphorical level, that Arjun is definitely, want to become a hero, want to become a hero, want to become a hero like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, right? He want to, as he is a radical, so Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, would be his ideal or role model. So he really want to become a Bhimrao Ambedkar in front of people, that I am also, people's leader, I'm your man, I'm the single man army. So such kind of the conception of Arjun, would be having in the minds of the Dalits, that he is ready to do anything, right, when it comes to the upliftment of the his people. So he is ready to do anything, and even snatching the rights of the other for the benefit of his own community, right? Before going deeper, I would like to know your view, Shishmita. What do you think, that do you approve Arjun's attitude? Do you approve Arjun's behavior, how he's behaving, and do you approve his way of dealing with the things? I hope I'm audible, Shishmita. I hope my voice is clear, Shishmita.
Sorry, ma'am, the connection lost for 2 minutes.
I hope I'm audible now.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So I would like to know about your view of Arjun, right? So do you approve Arjun's way of dealing, that how he wants to snatch the houses of the flood victims, and he really want to distribute those houses to, to his community, to people? Do you approve his acts? Do you approve his behavior, that how he's dealing the things?
No, ma'am. Actually, he's doing the same thing that the upper caste or the privileged people are doing to the lower caste.
Okay.
It's the same. It's the same analogy.
Okay, I'll totally agree with you, right? So basically, as we have already discussed, that he is actually a radical, right? So any kind of a radicalism on the name of, religion, caste, race, or gender, right? It should be, it should be discouraged, right? So no kind of radicalization or radical views should be tolerated, right? So the same way, right? So Arjun is actually a radical leader. But before discussing more about the urgent, so there are two more characters, right, that I would like to, shed light on. So first is the Shwenta. So Shwenta is actually a Dalit woman, right? So she is a Dalit woman who was actually having a, the who has actually completed his school, or I believe even the college as well. So in the basically in the play, she is actually aspiring to be a teacher, because her husband is actually a drunkard. Her husband is not at all working, and she is very much, disturbed by her husband. And the only thing that she is thinking of, that to getting into the college, or getting a degree of D.Ed or B.Ed, right? Because that time we have D.Ed, diploma in education, and on the other hand we also have B.Ed, right? So he really want to have the degree of B.Ed, so that she can start teaching, and she can, actually, she can actually make a way for her living, right? For living a good life, because with living her husband, she's actually having no hope, right? So as Shwentha is an aspiring teacher, right? So it is very common, right? It is very obvious that the first person that he will approach, that he will definitely go to Satish, right? Because he is a professor. And second thing, because they share the same caste, right? So in the hope of getting a help from the Satish, she went to Satish, right? So she went to Satish and she pleaded Satish. She requested Satish that if Satish could help him in any way, then she will be very much grateful for that help. And for that, Satish asked her that what kind of a help he would give to her in any way. So then Shwenta pleaded to have a false certificate, right? So she said that I am not at all in the in the frame of pursuing you could say a degree or any kind of you could say any kind of I don't have expenses, I cannot manage to get a degree, right? Because of the expenses, because of the resources, because I'm living in such a such a distressing situation because of her drunkard husband. So she said that I cannot afford the course, I cannot afford the degree. So she really wanted him to get her a false certificate, you could say a false certificate of teaching, that she has completed so and so degree. And so as Satish is a professor, and we are actually talking about Satish and Hema in a very good light, and there is no single trait of Satish and Hema that we actually talked about in any faulty way. So Satish outrightly rejected it, right? So instead of supporting Shwentha's you could say actions, right? So Satish rejected the actions, but on the other hand, Satish advised her that you should, start teaching the weak students of the community or weak students of the colony, and get some classes from the weak students and get some money, and then will enroll you in the course, right? In this way, he was saying that, "Okay, if we get you the false certificate, you will not be able to teach in the school, right? So and it would be wrong for the students, right, if we get you the certificate." But on the other hand, Kaka was very much agitated about Satish's action, right? So it is very common that Kaka was also he's actually supporter of his community. So he was actually agitated. He was very much against the decision of the Satish. So he said that if it would have been in my hands, right, I would have given you the whole degree, right? So he consoled Shweta. And on the other hand, even he said that what would be the predicament, right? Even the whole discourse that he is actually having with Shweta and Satish. So he was having that what would be the actually what will be the predicament, right? Jail, he said that, while fighting in the India's freedom struggle, I have already suffered in the jail. So what if you have to suffer in the jail for the for the benefit of your own people? So Kaka was totally against the you could say the humanitarian or the idealistic, you could say idealistic attitude of Satish. So I would like to also know that what is your point, right? Should Satish support Shwenta or not?
No, ma'am. By supporting her, he will put his own name in danger, and that would be no help for Shwantha also.
Oh, so yes, that is true. And in the case of Satish, so Satish actually wants to help Shwenta in a right way, right? Because he knows it that even if by getting any false certificate, she will be making a mockery of herself in the class, or even in the front of her superiors or anybody in institution that she is going to be serving. And on the other hand, as he is also a proponent of the true ideology of the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. When we were talking about the reservation, right? There were a lot of people who are talking about the reservation, pros and cons of reservation, and there was a whole meeting and discussion on the reservation when before it was given to the the SCs and STs. So while asserting the statement, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar himself said that the reservation will not affect the merit of a person, right? So he himself said that in the meeting, right? So these are his words, that a reservation should be given for their better representation, in order to give them space, in order to give them a voice to speak, but it will never be affecting the the merit of that person, right? But on the other hand, it's a very sad reality that in a wrong way it is actually used by the people in the contemporary India, right? And the same way, right? So the Satish is also advocating the same thing that Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said that time, right? So he, because he knows that it is all about the merit, so he knows that he believes in the power of education and the knowledge rather than on the certificate, right? So Shweta is the one, a very minor character. Then there was also a very minor character, that is the Sonal, right? So Sonal is actually the daughter of Dasarao, right? So as Dasarao is also a Brahmin, so Sonal is also a Brahmin. So Sonal is somebody who actually having the soft corner for the Arjun, right? So there we got to know more about Dasarao. So as we have already discussed that Dasarao being the being the liberal Brahmin, he is not the radical Brahmin, he is not the typical casteist Brahmin, he is actually a liberal Brahmin who is speaking for the rights and emancipation of the Dalits. So here his own daughter, she pretends to, or she professes that she loves Arjun, right? So what do you think that Dasarao's reaction would be?
Ma'am, according to his characterization, he should be okay with it because he was a spokesperson of on equality. But
Uh,
he could be a hypocrite also.
Yes, because we know it, Shweta, Sushmita, we are actually living in a very realistic world. So where we can see that, right? We really want change from outside. We really want a social change, but we don't want a personal change, right? We don't
Yes.
want to get out of our comfort zone, right? We really want, as a very popular saying, that we really want a Bhagat Singh in our neighborhood, but not in our own house, right? So that is very common phenomena in India, right? We really want a big change for the society, but we really don't want to change our personal lives, right? So the same goes with Dasarao. So there was a incident that, as you know it. So what do you think, that Arjun shares the same feeling for the Sonal as he is also a radical?
Ma'am, I have no idea because radical thing is being a radical is one thing, but when it comes to emotions, there could be a chance.
Okay, so there is not much mentioned about the the relationship of Arjun and Sonal, right? As Arjun is actually a radical. On the other hand, Arjun is, as I have already told you, his quest for becoming a hero. He really wants to become a BR or Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar. So he really wants to be a hero for his people. So the same way he tends to avoid Sonal, right? So he avoids Sonal's emotions and feelings as well, right? Because he knows that by any inclination or any association with Sonal as well would cause trouble to him, right? As because of the Dasarao, because the kind of reputation he has in this in the society. And second, he doesn't want to distract himself, right? Because fighting for his people, fighting for the community, getting a big thing done, getting a heroic thing is much more masculine rather than falling in love with a woman, right? Falling in love with the already a girl who is already has a soft corner for you. So it doesn't enchant, you could say, Arjun much, right? So he will be more into pursuing his heroic acts rather than falling in love. So there is no mention of any soft corner from the Arjun. On the other hand, there was an incident that Sonal, in order to get the attention of Arjun and to profess his feelings, he somehow wrote a love letter, right, in the writing of the Arjun, and he gave it to, and somehow got it delivered to his father Dasarao. And when Dasarao got to know that that Arjun loved his own daughter, Sonal. So he was agitated. So as I have already told you, we don't want a personal change, though he was speaking for the rights of the Dalits. But on the other hand, so one thing it could be, as Dasara was already, familiar with the Arjun's way of thinking and Arjun's way of leading. So he would not be, in the favor of, radical Dalit. On the other hand, second thing, so definitely there are some personal ties he is sharing with his daughter. So he doesn't want to indulge in any kind of a controversy and doesn't want to indulge his daughter to be in any kind of a controversy, right? So their relationship was totally disapproved by the Dasara, right? So what we are now, we are have, acquainted with all the people. So what we were talking about, the small incidents of the flood victims and their houses, right? So there was a Milan colony where the houses were about to be allotted to the flood victims, but on the other hand, it was Arjun who really wanted the houses to be delivered, or you could say the houses to be, exerted by the Dalits, right? So what he did is he actually took Dalits to that community, and giving them the promise that they are going to have a house, they are going to have a house, right? In this way, so there was a mob, right? A mob of Dalit people. So there are a lot of people who, in the hope of a house, in the hope of a land, in the hope of a house, in the hope of, some sort of belongingness, they went with the Arjun, and they went to the Milan colony. And because of there was so much mob, and definitely the chaos will happen there, and because of this the police will be called, right? And after seeing that these people are actually, forcibly, they are, asserting their right over the houses, and on the other hand, they how they are forcibly, attacking the government houses. So they started firing, right? So in that firing there are two three people who killed. So Shwenta was also one of them, right? So Shwenta killed at the end, right? So Shwenta was also one of them. So she killed in during the police firing, and there are two three people also got killed in that police firing, right? So that is also a kind of a, you could say, we were talking about the modern state. Yesterday, we also even were talking about Balbir Madhupuri. So Balbir Madhupuri himself, stated a few things about state hierarchy, that how, Dalits were criminalized by the state and the police, right? Because it's the same way, right? Hair police, they will not, take so easy action on the upper caste. So it is very easy to take action against the Dalits. So it is very easy to take a, action against the lower caste. It is very easy to, fire, to collect, encounter, or fire lower caste people. So this is also a kind of a reflection of the state, the same mechanism that state is using, right, in order to curb the, voice of Dalits. So the police arrested few, fired few, and the whole meanwhile Shweta was killed. And on the other hand, there is the whole muddle, the whole chaos, right? When the whole news came to the minds of the other people, so definitely we'll get to know the other, in the end we'll get to know the reactions of the other people, right? So they, when Dasarao and Kaka, so basically they were the people, the elderly people, right? When they got to know that such thing was actually happening in their community, such thing was actually happening in their locality, they were completely shocked, right? So Kaka, who was actually, a person who was, right, who is, always in the favor for raising the Dalit consciousness, right? On one way, he actually approves the action of the Arjun, right? So he said that, so by Arjun is actually, rising as a hero, right? So it would be a tremendous, right? A tremendous, it took a tremendous courage for a Dalit boy, right, start a movement like that. But on the other hand, Dasarao, as we know that he already has a prejudiced mind because of the personal reasons in connection with his daughter Sonal, right? So he was afraid when he got to know that Sonal was also not at home, right? So it might be a reason that he was worrying that Sonal might be with Arjun, right? Or Arjun or Sonal might have fled or eloped from the whole scene. And he was also, on the other hand, he is totally disapproving the actions of the Arjun. So there are totally two contrast pictures, right? Kaka was positive, but on the other hand, Dasarao is definitely negative, right? And the other hand, Satish and Hema, they are, as I have already told you, they were totally neutral, right? Both of them, especially Satish, he outrightly criticized Arjun for taking such, you could say, such a radical step, right? He said that it was actually, against the, rights. Of the flood victims. And on the other hand, he even spoke about the, you could say, the equality, right? The idea of equality. And this the so Satish is totally neutral. And in the end, there took a turn of the event. So what happens is, when Arjun returns back to the people, right? So there you got to know that Kaka, who is actually very much, hopeful of and approving the actions of Arjun, he got to know that in order to provide home, in order to provide houses, in order to provide shelter to, to Dalit people, to the his community, it is not just Arjun was actually doing something and raising voice for them. Arjun was also taking some money from people, right? So it was not at only for the heroic act, it was for the money as well, right? So he took money from everybody, he took 5 rupees or 10 rupees from the people, and promised them that they will get a home sooner, right? So in this way, Kaka's hopes were dashed to the ground when he got to know that the you could say the appalling act of Arjun, right? By taking money from his own people, and that too deceiving him and giving them the false hope or false promises of the house, of the government houses that were already not there, right? So he said that he will be doubly charged, right? So first, he was responsible for, you could say, he will be responsible for, for the all the chaos that the mob lynching, the mob firing that they have there. And on the other hand, second, he feels that it is totally wrong on the part of Arjun to extract money from his own people, to deceive or betray his own people, right? So Kaka's mindset was totally changed for Arjun on the end. But on the other hand, the Sarau, right? As we know, the Sarau, he is totally against Arjun. But on the other hand, as we have already told you, that Sonal has a soft corner. So Sonal went to see Arjun's glory, that how Arjun will conquer people, how Arjun will have, do something for his own people. He really wants to see Arjun's glory. So somehow she was also there in that chaos. And when police was actually, firing at the people, so it was because of Arjun that Arjun saved Sonal and got Sonal home safe and completely in a rescued situation, right? So in this way, by seeing his daughter totally safe, and when he got to know that he was saved by Arjun especially, and so this was the reason that the Sarau somehow changed his view about the Arjun, right? So it gives us an open ending that in the progressive India, we are living in, we are not living in blacks and whites, we are living in somewhere in the grays, right? So for example, there the only heroes, or you could say the only neutral person, the only ray of hope we can have just from the Satish and Hema. And that we have the image of, again, I'm harping on the same point of the Shakespeare, that star-crossed lover, the lovers who crossed the lades, right? The star-crossed lover, that how love is the only, you could say, is the only solution to come out of the barriers of caste, creed, gender, or even the class, right? On the other hand, Kaka and the Sarau are also portrays hopes that how, you could say, there is an India where a Dalit and a Brahmin both are talking about the liberation or emancipation of the lower caste, right? They both are talking about, they are actually talking about of the people who are actually in the pain and suffering, right? And on the other hand, though, the Tabhagat has showed different dimensions of Arjun. But on the other hand, in the end, Arjun also realized that his radical actions will only in the end harm him only, and will not do anything for him and not for the community, right? So in this way, we got to know a different kind of roots that the different characters you know ultimately chooses in the end, right? So Satish, right? Satish chooses the direct route, you could say direct route. He chooses the education, employment, and the humanitarian, the real ground that Ambedkar built for people. But on the other hand, Kaka wants to choose an escape route, as he was supporting Arjun, as he was supporting even Shweta, right? He really wants to have his people uplifted, and wants to go for the betterment of his people. But really, but because the route, the clear route that Satish was actually posing in front of people was a bit difficult for all the masses, because Satish is definitely one of the exceptions, right? Satish, when we think about Satish, living with Hema and everything about Satish, so totally it is an exception, right? When it comes to all the Dalit people, or all the Dalit communities, right? So Kaka wants to have a escape route, and same way, even when we are talking about the Dasarao, right? He is also not taking the same route, because when it comes to his own daughter, right, he is somehow diverted from the path of equality, right? He treated or humiliated Arjun because he was a Dalit, because he was a radical leader, and he doesn't want any harm for his daughter, right? And on the other hand, same goes with Arjun. Arjun is not only taking the simple direct route, but on the other hand, Arjun was also on the escape route. He really want to, want to make a retreat from the real world, from the harsh realities. First, he wants to emerge as a leader rather than being a supporter, rather than being a brother, rather than being a, you could say, a help. He really wants to emerge to be a hero, right? He really wants to be another Ambedkar. So he was definitely, taking another route, and definitely, putting his selfish motives over the welfare of the community. And second thing, the route that he chose in the end, that is extracting money for his own people, right? And giving them the homes forcibly snatching from the government. So that is all about the characters and the different routes that they have taken during the course of the action. So this is the reason that the title of the story is Roots and Escape Routes, right? I hope this much is clear. Do you have any questions, Shushmita?
Ma'am, what does escape route symbolizes in the title?
I have already told you, it is an translation, Shushmita. Basically, the title written in the, you could say, in the Marathi was Vata and Palvata, right? It's the same way in the Punjabi, Vatta and Palvata hi, what we used to say that, right? So you could say Vata. Vata means roots, right? So Vata are the same thing. For example, let me give you a brief example of the rural area, right? When there is a big field, right? You must have seen that in the rural, in the villages or in the rural India, right? When there is a long field and you have to cross the field in order to reach on the other end, right? So there is a small route, right? The small route, there will be having here and there will be having water and sometimes the crops, right? So people devised a small route that directly goes to the point, right? That directly goes to the other end. I hope you are understanding and you are able to visualize,
Yes, ma'am.
right? And on the other hand, then there are few people, right, who are, that is what is Vatta. That is what is Vatta in Punjabi or even in the Marathi, right? On the other hand, Palvata is ki sometimes people used to have a crisscross by which they are going to, rather to take, you could say, the same route, the same direct route, the Vatta, they devised few zigzag or few crisscross from the village or from the, you could say, from the fields, right? So escape routes are basically the shortcuts, right? So it is
Yes.
basically about the shortcuts that we want to reach, that we devise to reach to a destination, right? So, or it can be a retreat, right? So in order to avoid direct contact with the outer world, for example, if you are, you could say, as I have already given you, that the Vata, the main route will be in the center of the field, right? Half field is there, half field is there. So if you are crossing the field of anybody else, you will be seen, right? For example, if you are crossing the field of any other farmer, so definitely that farmer will be agitated that you are crossing, why you are coming to his fields, right? So the
Yes.
direct route gives you the access to the external world, right? You will be seen, you will be judged, right? You will be having the direct experience with the first, with the world, right? With the society.
Yes.
So on the other hand, escape routes, if you are devising something from the outside, something from the, by crossing zigzag and making a zigzag manner in the fields, or by, you could say, by hiding in the fields, or by, tracing your way towards the destination, so there you will not be seen. There you will not be having the, direct, you could say, direct contact with the society, with the external forces. So it is actually a way of avoiding the reality, right?
Yes.
So what Dasarao, or you could say, even Kaka and even Arjun were doing, right? They were avoiding the reality by following the escape route. For example, for example, when we talk about Kaka, so Kaka really wants to have, really wants to have false certificate for Shwenta, right? Because he wants the good things for, he wishes or wants good things for Shwenta. But on the other hand, Satish was aware of the reality that even if she gets a certificate, she will be failed as a teacher, right? On the other hand, same goes with the Dasarao, right? So Dasarao pretends that he will be the voice of the Dalits, but on the other hand, it is also an escape route that it is very easy to say for the masses, and we expect them to change, right? But on the other hand, it is very difficult to change our own self, right? When it comes to his own daughter, so he was in the dilemma, right? And he outrightly rejected Arjun. He humiliated him, and scolded him for falling in love with his daughter. On the other hand, the same way go with the Arjun. Arjun is totally a dynamic character, right? So what he is doing, he is also following the escape route. He wants to become a hero, as I've already told you. So he was not there as a supporter, not as a brother, not as a, you could say, the you could say, as the a ray of hope or a help, a total help, like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is, right? Dr. B.R. Ambedkar really wants to to raise the Dalit consciousness. He really don't want to become a leader, right? So this was the reason when he was talking about reservation representation and talking about the constitution, right? So he never let his merits compromised on any other interest. So this was the reason that there is a vast difference between Arjun and the pick a picture ideal picture of Ambedkar, right? So Arjun was also taking an escape route, right? And even deceiving his own people. So that is selfish interest. And this way we got to know that his selfish interest are are far more you could say visible when we trace the characterization of Arjun, rather than what he is actually visualizing in front of his people. So he's also taking a shortcut, he's also taking a escape route. I hope this
Yes,
much is
ma'am.
clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so do you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
Which character do you like, you like the most in the play?
Ma'am, I think I like Satish because he's neutral.
Oh, okay. Definitely, right? Even the Tabhagat also trying to make the Satish as an ideal citizen, right? An ideal citizen of a progressive India, right? So where a Dalit, it can be risen, right? He can be risen to the status of professor, right? He will be fight against all the odds of caste and class, and definitely he will be the citizen who is using his logic and reason, rather than he will be driven by the emotions, right? Rather he will be driven by the emotions of his his own same caste, and rather he will be trying to put his frustration on the Hema, rather than they are portraying the the image of the star-crossed lovers, right? So even in this way also, when we trace the relationship of Satish and Hema and the construction of the Satish, so there you got to know even the love and education are the two ingredients that are proposed by the uh, Datta Bhagat in order to create a progressive India, right? I hope this much is clear,
Yes, ma'am.
right? So let's start with the two short stories, right? You have four short stories in your syllabus, but I'll be discussing the two, right? So because these are most too important, and so even I recommend you to read these two, right? So
Yes.
if yesterday you were asking me that should you really want yourself to go for the reading of the text, or should I recommend you the reading of the text? But I definitely recommend that you should read the short stories, right? It will hardly consume 2-3 pages. That's it, right?
Yes.
On the other hand, it will just consume your 20 to 25 minutes while going to bed. So on the other hand, these PDFs are also available, right? So the first story that we'll be talking about, the Poison Blood by Bandhu Madhav, right? And the second we will be talking about the Storied House by Vaman Govind Novel, right? Both the stories uh, you know are the portrayals of the pain and suffering of the Dalits, right? On the other hand, Datta Bhagat, what we have read in the first hour, that we were actually posing, talking about the power structure, the caste constructions, and even talking about the ideal progressive India, the different characters, the multi-layered characters, that they were not in the darks, white and blacks. They were definitely, they are in the grays, right? And even the image of the progressive India is also somewhere gray, right? But on the other hand, these stories are totally about the whites and blacks, right? So here in the Poison Blood, you will also see that the kind of sufferings, right, the kind of a pain Dalits have endured from the centuries, and same goes with the Storied House, right? So the very first thing that the Poisoned Blood, and there are very few characters. That it is a short story. I have already told you during the play that in such narratives, basically when we are talking about the realistic narratives, the author, the poet, or the dramatist, they don't want to overcrowd the characters, because when we are talking about the realistic realistic writings. So in realistic writings, you really want to strike a chord with the audience, and they will only feel the pathos when they are going to have minimal characters, right? They will be actively indulged with the every minor detail of the character, right? So this is the same way Poison Blood. And because it is a short story, right, in the short story definitely we are going to have two or three characters. We were going to have minimal characters, because if we are going to have too much characters in a short story, so it is going to be a muddle, rather than rather than be scare the characters sketched will be precision, right? So here you just have two people, basically three people. So in a Poison Blood, Bandhu Madhav, sorry, Bandhu Madhav is also from the Maharashtra, and he lived in extreme poverty and distress. So this was with the reason that he is writing a story like the Poisoned Blood, right? So Poisoned Blood is definitely a title that signifies that how Dalits, right? That how the lower caste people are, always, they are always, left to live on the leftovers, right? In the first lecture, if you remember, Shushmita, we were be talking about the construction of the Dalit, and there I have told you that they are not, they do not have any position and possession in the mainstream, right? They were just allowed to carry a broken plate, and they have to beg from people, right? I hope you remember this much,
Yes, ma'am.
right? So the same way, right? So here the same construction will come again and again. So basically here the narrator was actually, in the whole story he was actually reminiscing, right? He was actually recounting his childhood experiences, so he is writing about his own experiences. So here there is a narrator and his grandfather, right? So he was talking that one day he and his grandfather, they went to a village, right? They went to a village when they were, when he was a very small kid, before moving to the city and before having education and employment. He was talking about his painful days, his painful autobiographical account in the village, right? So here what happened when he was actually a small kid, maybe, or 7 or 8 or 12 or 13, and adolescent, he was actually going to field with his grandfather, right? So even Bandhu Madhav was also a Mahar, right? So the same community or caste Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar belonged to. So in Mahars are basically, as I have already told you, they belong to Shudra. They don't belong to Ati Shudra. So we have already discussed the distinction between Shudra and Ati Shudra. So Shudras are the uh, traditionally artisans, right? So they were are the communities, as I have already told you. So they were dancers, potters, they were musicians, they are performers. So same goes with Mahars. So Mahars were also Shudras, right? So they were not Ati Shudras. So Ati Shudras was also having the professional duties. But as I have already told you, that during the colonial period, such kind of activities like dancing, singing, magic, poetry, sculptures, that were banned by the British government, right? Because they find these activities to be unethical, because these activities are nowhere mentioned in the Christianity, right? So Christianity, Bible, they totally against such kind of activities, right? So this was be the reason that Mahars, they don't have their traditional family profession, right? I hope you got my point, that they don't have their traditional profession. They don't have
Yes, ma'am.
a profession that that is actually running in their lineage, right? So same way here narrator and his grandfather, because they belong to the Mahars, so they don't have their own profession and what they can do easily at home. So what they did in the past time, so they went to so they went to the landlord. They went to the landlord, the fields of the landlord, and there they did the odd jobs, right? So they were actually doing the daily wage activity, right? So in that field, so they will be grazing the fields, plowing the fields, so such kind of odd jobs they were doing on a daily basis. So they go door to door, so they go field to field to approach the landlords. And so it is very common that the kind of relationship they are going to be having with the landlord. So the relationship will be dominant and servant, right? I hope you understand the term. So dominant, so
Yes, ma'am.
landlord will be the ultimate dominant. He will exert his power, he will exert his control in all the forms on the servant. And narrator and his grandfather will be the ultimate servants, right? So same way they went to Bapu Patel. So we have three people: a narrator, his grandfather, and the landlord, that is the Bapu Patel, right? So they went to landlord Bapu Patel. So at the very first sight, I have already told you, the people were saying that they are living in progressive India, but we have already discussed that, in the Balbir Madhopuriya, that he said that the Nambardars, Jaildars, right? The Nambardar, Jaildars, Jagirdars, right? They despised our side. They don't want to look at us. On the other hand, they torture us, they put mud on us, right? They humiliated us, insulted us, right? So such kind of activities were very common in the villages of India, right? So same way here, when they went to ask for work, when they went to, to do their work, so the first thing that Bapu Patil, so Patils are also, I have already told you that they belong to the upper caste. So the Patil humiliated them at first, right? So he called them names, or put a lot of insults on that. So they started the day like it. So for the grandfather, it is very common, right? So the grandfather was, he was of an age of 70 or 80. He has lived his whole life. So the grandfather was totally, neutral about, or you could say totally immune about their insults, right? So for grandfather, it didn't matter somehow, because he got acquainted. For him, it was quite natural, right? It's like become a part and parcel of their life, right? Because they belong to the community. They are the Dalits, they are lower caste, and earlier they were untouchable. So it is quite, obvious for him to have such kind of reactions. But on the other hand, narrator, right, who is 7 or 8 or somewhere between 11 or 12, right, an adolescent guy, and who is, actually bubbling with energy, and living in a constitutional democratic country. So he was agitated, right? He was very much aggressive. He became aggressive, that how could Bapu Patil, how could this Patil will speak to me in that manner. So he argued, even argued with the Patil, and Patil was somehow at the first thing. So what kind of a reaction Patil would be having, Shushmita? What do you think? I hope I'm audible, Shushmita. I hope I'm audible,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
right? So I will be asking that what kind of a reaction Patil will be having, right? When the narrator, raised his voice, and when the narrator, when the narrator criticized the, cursed words of the Bapu Patil. So what would be the reaction of the Patil?
Ma'am, he will be definitely agitated by this.
Definitely, right? Very good. So the common reaction would be this, right? So first thing, Bapu, but the Patil just, mocked at the child, that how
Ma'am,
small you are. Yes.
it's I have read the short story by Mahashweta Devi, Salt.
Okay, very good.
It's in our syllabus
Yes,
in the translation section.
yes,
It's the same thing, that a tribal person raised his voice against him. So he just cut the supply of salt for those tribal communities. It's the same kind of thing. He was also agitated. So I think in this case, Babu Patel was also agitated.
yes, the same way. And even if you should read, if you are into Mahashweta Devi, the very famous story of Mahashweta Devi is Draupadi, right? If you have time, you must read, right? A clear contrast between the Draupadi of Mahabharata. She portrayed a Draupadi. Basically, the woman is a Draupadi, a tribal woman, right? And because
Yes.
she was a tribal woman, she was raped, multiple times by the police. And the story tells about the saga, that how that woman raised, his voice in the end, right? So in Draupadi, there was the case that when, her honor was in question, so Lord Krishna came to her rescue, right? A male leadership comes to foreplay in the narrative, right, to rescue the honor of the woman, right? So Lord Krishna came, but here she was a tribal woman, there will be no Krishna. I hope
Yes.
you got my point, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So that, and on the other hand, there will be no male leadership, right? So a clear
Yes.
contrast between Draupadi, and Draupadi was made by Mahashweta Devi because she was a tribal woman. On the other hand, Mahashweta Devi has done a lot for the upliftment of the, you could
Yes,
say,
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
tribals, right? And even he did his PhD in Gayatri Chakravarti's Walk, right? So they have a very close connections. When we were reading Gayatri Chakravarti's Walk and Mahashweta Devi, so they have a very close connection. Their ideas are somewhere same, right? They were both talking about the subalterns, right? And
Yes.
subalterns. And even the next lecture, we will be talking about tribal literature. We have two, two lectures left, and there we'll be talking about the tribal literatures, and we will definitely going to have a, a reading of Salt. And I would recommend that you would read Draupadi. And there is one more story by Mahashweta Devi, that is Rudali, right? Have you heard the tradition Rudali?
Yes, ma'am. A
Right?
movie is also based on the
Yes,
story, no?
they were somewhere down the line. You could say roughly it was based on the Rudali tradition rather than of that story. So Rudalis are the professional weepers,
Yes.
right? Professional weepers that upper caste people hire, because for them, crying and weeping is a small person's job, right? So they don't. And on the other hand, the more kind of a people they have, on the procession, on the funeral, right, on such professional weepers, so that also signifies their status in the society. So you would even read about the Rudali as well, right? So these two stories, Draupadi and Rudali, are are the masterpieces of Mahashweta Devi, right? We will
Yes.
be definitely talking about when we will be talking about Mahashweta Devi. So I have the same case, right? The poison blood. So the basic thing is that why narrator and grandfather was there in the field for the blood, right, for the bread only, right? They really want to earn a living, they really want to have something, so right, so the only reason that they will be having here, that in order to earn a living, right? But on the other hand, that is very very obvious that, right, not a single penny, right, we would like to compromise at the cost of our self respect, right? So self respect definitely comes to the front. But on the other hand, because they were Dalits, so they were definitely treated to be the second class citizens. They were not treated to be the individuals, even. They were always treated as an object rather than a subject. So it is very common, right? It is very common for these people, right, to have such kind of insults. And it is very common for any Patil, any landlord like Patil to humiliate them or insult them on a daily basis, right? So somehow narrator raised their voice of resistance, and the narrator was raising his anger against the caste and the prejudice, that how could, before even we have started their work, right, if we are doing our work and we are actually doing our work in a wrong way, even we did any harm to you by doing your work, doing our work in a wrong way, then you will come and curse us. But before even starting our job, before even knowing us, how could you simply judge us? How can you simply humiliate us or insult us, right? So definitely here narrative is raising his voice, raising his anger against the caste and the prejudice, right? But on the other hand, what happened is the but somehow, as I have already told you, his grandfather was the ideal figure, elderly people, right? So his grandfather was an elderly man. He somehow shuts his mouth, and he said that it is going to be a daily routine. Let's just go to our work and get it done. In the end we'll get money and we'll buy something, right? So this daily wages, these are the daily wages, these are the daily laborers, right? A kind of a bonded laborers for the patels and for the landlords, right? So what happened is they did the whole they did their work for the whole work tirelessly. They work very hard, and in the end, when they went to the patil, they went to the Bapu Patil, they went to the landlord. They asked for their for their wage, for the daily wage, the minimum wage rate, what they are going to have. But because narrator raised his voice, right, so that actually angered Patil. So in the end, rather than giving them their money, he shooed them away, right? So rather than just giving them the wage that they really deserved after working tirelessly for the whole day, right? So he simply shooed them away again. He humiliated them and just he just said that you people just go away, right? I'm not going to pay you anything, right? So this is also the ultimate kind of exploitation, you could say, right? The ultimate exploitation of the Dalits, right? Because the only thing that they only thing they have on the name of livelihood is just this odd jobs, the kind of hard working jobs they can do in the fields. But in the end, their minimal wages, they were denied, right? They were totally denied the deserving labor, right? The labor of their hard work, right? So the Bapu Patil denied the labor, and the grandfather and the narrator, right, to poor people, they don't have any choice, right? Because they don't have any money, and they will be surviving just on the basis of daily wages, right? They were doing work and then they were getting the bread, right? So now they don't have any money, and you know it very well, because they belong to the lower caste. There will be no people who are going to give them money on credit, who are going to give them bread on credit, right? So there was no people who are actually trusting them, or you know giving them any kind of you could say help, right? So the only option they were left with, just to go, to just sleep without the bread, right? The only thing they can do is to starve. The only option is the hunger, nothing else, right? So they were be sitting, in the field, what thinking about what should be done. We wasted the whole day, by serving the Bapu Patil, and now he is denying the money, right? So they have seen that. Then comes the poison blood bread. Then there was the oxen, right? So there were the animals, those who are actually were, wandering in the fields. So there were the, you must have seen that there are a few spaces were made for the for the fodder and the water of the animals, right? There were few spaces, if you can visualize that, right? So there was one whole space where the grass will be put. On the other hand, there was a whole space where there will be water, so that the animals will come and drink, and animals will come and you could say have their food in between, right? In between the course of the labor of the whole day, right? So they were sitting next to that, and there the grandfather, right? The grandfather saw that there was a small cell or a pen, ultimately small cell of the oxen, and there was that poisoned blood, there was that bread, right? The small piece of a bread that was there, right? So that bread, that roti, basically there was a roti. So there will be a lot of rotis that will be there for the cows and the oxen, right? So so there was just one leftover roti there, right? So that was the ultimate roti. So the ultimately the grandfather, he was so hungry, he picked up that bread, right? He picked up that stale bread, that stale roti, right? The basi roti, right? जो पता नहीं I would be वो 3 दिन से पड़ी है, 4 दिन से पड़ी है, 5 दिन से पड़ी है, and even that was rejected by the oxen or any kind of a cow, right? So look at it, that bread, that roti was there because no animal wants to eat it, right? But because they were bounded by the circumstances, right? So the ultimately the grandfather, he picked up that roti, he picked up that bread, and he ate that bread. But it was so stale that it was even rejected by the animals. They went home, and by the time, in the end, the health of the grandfather started deteriorating, right? Because of the basi roti, because of that poisoned bread, right? Because it was so stale, it was so unhealthy that it ultimately caused a kind of a disbalance in the body of that grandfather. And moreover, he was old, right? So it would be definitely unhealthy for him to eat any kind of a stale bread, right? So the same way, for the whole night they were actually thinking about what to do. And by the morning, right, the same, but the thing was that the condition of the grandfather was getting worsen and worsen, right? In the end, the grandfather died because of that poison blood, right? So because of that poison bread. And while dying, right, he was actually holding the hand of the narrator, and he said that I really don't want my people to die of this poisoned bread, right? In the end, he actually, you could say, he pleaded the narrator was just a 7 8 year old boy, a small boy. He held his hand and he prayed that he said that take this accursed bread away from the mouths of the mahars, right? So he said, in the end, he said that this cursed bread, this poisoned bread, please take this away from the mouths of the mahar, right? So this was the ultimate, right? The end dialogue of the grandfather actually echoes a lot of pathos in the minds of the audience, right? He really doesn't, right? He didn't want his people to suffer more and more from such kind of caste based discrimination, that they are ultimately starved to death. They will be starved to, and ultimately they will be having death in such a cruel way, right? So this was the reason that the poisoned bread, right? So this poisoned bread, literally it can be the stale bread, the unhealthy bread that the grandfather ate, right? That was even rejected by any kind of animal, all kind of an animal. But on the other hand, this poisoned bread metaphorically can be the caste system, right? The poison bread that was actually making people die, making people suffer, making people's life miserable, that was the caste system, right? I hope this much is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, so this was a very simple story, right? So that talks a lot about it, right? That so you could see that, right? A man has nothing, right? He has nothing to eat, just the poison plate. On the other hand, there you can feel that even the animals of the upper caste people are blessed, right? Even the animals of upper caste people are privileged, right? Even they get the they even they get bread and water. But on the other hand, dalits are worse, right? They are even treated worse than animals, right? So they are not even dehumanized, they are treated, and even they are totally unseeable, right? We have already discussed these points, that how they are invisible from the society, right? Society don't want to even see them, don't want to acknowledge them, don't want to see their existence, right? So they are even worse than the animals of the upper caste people, right? And this is how the poisoned blood bread is actually the bread of casteism, right? That how casteism is so inherent, right? So it has taken a, a form of a poisoned bread that is going to kill the, a lot of dalits, right? He's actually taking the lives of the dalits, right? I hope this much is clear,
Yes, ma'am.
right? Let's start with the next story. Right now we will be talking about the storied house by Vaman Govind novel, right? So the storied house. Um, but before starting the story, I would like to have your view on things, Shushmita. So what do you think that a man's uh, what do you think that an identity of the man will be asserted by which aspect, right? For a man, for a human, what is the most important thing? What do you think, in order to have your identity, what would be the one thing that you need most?
Its own personal space.
It can be anything, right? I'm talking about identity of a man, identity of a person, identity of a human being. When we will be talking about identity, basically, for example, if I ask you, Shushmita, where do you belong? So one thing, to whom you feel that you belong, the aspect, the major aspect that you feel that that is what makes me ma'am Shushmita. So what is the one aspect that is very much important in everybody's life and in a person's life in order to build a kind of identity? Or you could say, I would like to put in this way, that the, the minimal aspiration that a man will be having, the minimal aspiration, if a man comes to this world, what would be the minimum aspiration he wants to achieve this much?
To have access to good quality food, a place to live, a place to safely live,
Okay, then I
and education.
and we will be, when we will be talking, commonly talking about the, minimal necessity, so there comes the food, cloth and shelter, right? So after that we will be adding education and hygiene, and now sanitation
Yes.
as well, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So the very first thing, when we be talking about the identity of a man, right, when we are talking about identity of the man, to whom he belongs, to a space, right, a space to which he wholly and solely belongs, that is his house, his home, right? The very common thing, that you feel more at ease when you are at your home, right? When you are at your house. I hope I am correct.
Ma'am, can you please repeat?
uh, I'm saying that the more, at ease you feel when you are in your home. So house is very, the concept of home or house is very much important for the for your identity, right? You
Yes.
feel connected, you feel belonged to only place, that is your home, right? No matter
Yes.
what, how many, how many countries you have traversed, no matter how many, friends you have, relatives you have, but ultimately the only place that you belong, that is your house, right?
Yes,
The
ma'am.
house,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
would say, if I will be talking about a dependent child, for example, a child, right? A
Yes,
kid,
ma'am.
right? That will be the parents. But for an,
Yes.
even for the independent, person as well, right? Where he has lived his where he has actually, lived for whole his life, right? The four walls, right? I'm not talking about the idea of the home, because home is definitely a feeling, right? It is actually an expression in your mind, right? So actually I'm talking about the house, right? The very much construction of the four walls, right?
Yes,
that
ma'am.
that four walls is actually your house. You feel more at ease in your room rather in the drawing room, rather in the kitchen, rather somewhere, right? So the house is the ultimate thing, that is your ultimate identity, right? The first and foremost thing where you belong to. And second thing, even I asked you what is the minimal aspiration, the same thing, because we belong to our house, because we really belong to that four walls, right? So this is the reason that house becomes a very prominent part uh, in the construction of our personality, right? Everybody wants to have a house, right? No matter if somebody is living in America, somebody is living in England, somebody is living in Australia or any part of the world, he really wants to have a house where he has spent his childhood. You would agree with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So the same thing here as well, right? So we will be having a character, right? He really wants to build the house. So the concept of the house, as I have already told you, there was a difference between home and house. Home is simply an expression and a kind of a mental state, but house is a physical being, and we really want a physical being. We really want the physical reality. If we have the physical reality, only then we can have the mental reality, right? So it is all about the
Yes.
physicality of the things. So physical house is the ultimate thing, the minimal aspiration. That was what I was saying, that if anybody is living in any corner of the world, he really wants to have a good house at the place where he has spent his childhood, where his parents are living, and in his community, and whatsoever we will be talking about, he really needs a house, right? Which will be the
Yes, ma'am.
ultimate reflection of his personality. So say here we have just the two or three characters in the story. The storied house, right? So storied house is all about the one or two storied house, right? So that was a very rare phenomena if we are talking about the storied house. But in the contemporary India, when even when we're talking about the urban or metro cities, right? So it is very common, right? We will be having, even we will be having a skyscrapers on the name of home nowadays, right? So we will be having a lavish big homes, multi storied homes. We will be having a parking space, right? Underground parking space. We will be having the skyscrapers like buildings for our home. We will be having the glass houses, in every room. So such kind of is the concept of the lavish homes, and especially the architecture when we are talking about the contemporary India in the context of urban and metro cities. But if we go back, house is very much important, and still it is very much prominent part of man's psyche. The construction of the house, the construction of the four wall, right? Because it provides shelter, right? Because we have already talked about the minimal things. So we need food, and if we are earning, we are able to get food, and if we are able to get ourselves covered. But we really need a shelter, a permanent shelter, right? Our own four walls, the bricks, the house, it symbolizes our shelter, right? So no
Yes,
matter what,
ma'am.
wherever you are, you are living in England, you are living in Australia, even if you want to go home, so you really have a shelter, right? So you really have a shelter in your village, in your city, and even in your locality. So here the same way. And so the storied house was a kind of a very rare thing in the few years back. If we were talking about 1960s, 70s, right? So 80s. There would be a very few houses which have one story or two storied house, right? So even one storied and two stories house are ultimately the symbol of it was a symbol of wealth. It was the symbol of prosperity, right? So only very only the people who are actually earning very good money, they are able to build such lavish houses. Nowadays the construction is totally different. You can have a two-story or three-stories house, even at the space of 50 feet, right? Because of the construction, because of the architectural work and maps. But earlier this phenomena was not common. And on the other hand, as I have already told you, the idea of land, right? We have already discussed this point in the first lecture as well, that because Dalits, they don't have any land, because they were not doing any kind of a work that promises their land. On the other hand, they have they have the shabby huts, and
Yes,
that too outside the outside the village. So
yes,
the metaphor of home is very much prominent in their memory. They really want to belong to a house. So here we have a character, that is the Bayaji, right? So Bayaji, and then we have Bayaji as he also belonged to a Mahar caste, right? So Bayaji is Dalit, and then we have an opponent, right? So Bayaji is our protagonist, and then we have the antagonist Patil, right? So we will be talking about the setting of the Maharashtra. So there were the, as I have already told you, in North India, North India, especially Punjab and Haryana, the Jats are the dominant community community. And if you go to south, there were the Shetties, right, the landowning classes. And when we were talking about the Maharashtra, the Patils, right? The Patils are the dominant community, right? They are the upper caste people. So here we also have a Patil. He is also, the ultimate upper caste man, the wealthy man of the village. And then we have a Bahuja. Bahuja is a goon or a rascal, right? So he is also a person who is with the in tune with the Patil, right? So here we have a Bayaji. So Bayaji is a person who is actually, who actually served enough in a government service, and after the 35 years of retirement, right, he has served 35 years in a government service, and now he wants to have a house at his village, right? He wants to build a house, and because you know it very well that people are, doing government jobs in a different spaces, and they really, after, retirement, it is very common phenomena to build their homes, and to cherish their, the last years of their life in their people, with their locality, with their, community, right? So the same goes with the Bayaji. And on the other hand, Bayaji, he was living in a Mumbai, or any a big city, so it is very difficult to build a house there. On the other hand, it is easy to build a house in the village, because of the competitive cost structure, right? So this was the reason that Bayaji, after the 35 years of retirement, right, he came back to his village, and he wants to build a house, and he wants to build a storied house, right? So he has enough money, maybe he has enough money after the retirement, and he wants to build a storied house. So the thing, storied house. And on the other hand, the only storied house in the village is just of the Patil, right? Patil was that much powerful, wealthy, and prosperous man in the village, that he just have a storied house. And what would be the reaction of the Patil when he comes to know about the Bayaji's building of the house, right? Definitely he will be angry, right? that
Yes.
that how could a person, right, how could a Shudra, how could a Dalit will, come at par with me? How will he be equal with me, right?
Yes,
he,
ma'am.
he will not, tolerate, because he knows it. As I have already know, you told you that, right? In the rural India, or in the Indian villages, right, ultimately you will be known by your houses, right? The big tall houses people are going to have in the villages. And urban cities, the mindset is little bit different, right? But on the other hand, in the villages, so the ultimate, authority of your power, wealth, and you know of your status was the house, right? So when Patil got to know that Bayaji was actually building a house for that two-storied house, he was totally shocked, and he was very angry, because he felt that if Bayaji will build a house, if a Shudra, if a Dalit will build a house, and that too a two-storied house, a big house in the village, it will definitely diminishes his status, right? It will
Yes.
diminish his
Yes.
status, his wealth, his the kind of prestige he was carrying of having such a lavish house. And the other thing, the jealousy, right? The jealousy, the envy, that how come a Shudra, right? How come a Shudra can be equal with the landlord class? How can a Shudra, how can be a Shudra be equal with the Patil? Then now this Bayaji will become a equal with the Patil, right? So definitely there are a lot of constructions of power, jealousy, and interrelationships, right? So you could say that how caste, right? It is the caste that gives them the authority, and it leads to the different power dynamics, right? We have already discussed in the previous lectures that it was not just about the caste, right? Caste provides few people few privileges, right? It gives few people power. This was the reason they want themselves to be associated with powerful only, right? And because of the caste, it gives few people no power. It made them powerless. And during this war of power, it is a very common thing that a person, he wants to be powerful, he wants to be with powerful people, and nobody wants to be with powerless people, and nobody wants to speak with powerless people, and nobody wants to even share the power, right? I hope this much is clear,
Yes, ma'am.
right? That nobody wants to share the power, right? So we will be having a clear clear image of the Patil, that he is not ready to share the power, right? Though his caste is giving him the ultimate power, that he will be the superior. But Bayaji, because of the economic condition, so there come the the interplay of caste and class, that because he was a government servant, so he can be risen up to the status of a man having a house as equal with the Patil. So the construction of the caste, that because you can rise in the class, that if you can rise your economic standard, so you can even defeat the construction of the caste, right? So this was the reason, this was the actually basis of reservation, right? But because it was it was the basis of representation, right? The more and more Dalits will be having the economic freedom, right? Then nobody will say anything bad to them, right? If they will be powerful with the money, if they will be equal with the other people, then that people will pay no attention to the caste, right? But the sad reality is that the conditions are totally different. It is still very much there, right? So we have discussed it enough in the first lecture. So here the same, that the Patil is not ready to compromise with the power, not because it is not just about the caste, it is all about the class as well, right? So it is all about the status, prestige, and respect he has earned on the name of caste and class, right? So this would be the reason that he is wholeheartedly, he was against the idea of Bayaji's building the house. But on the other hand, if we see from the point of view of Bayaji, right? So Bayaji, on the other hand, he wants to build the house, like a very common man's quest for belongingness, right? We have already talked about the positioning of the Dalits. But on the other hand, you could say that if you talk about the ancestors of the Bayajis, they were living in the huts, they were living in the mud house, they were living in such a shabby conditions, they were living in the roadside, right? They were treated in such a wrong way. So it was like a dream for him to build a house, right? So it would like a dream come true, it would like be a villa, right? So a simple house would be like a villa, a palace, or a mansion for the Bayaji, right? So it would be a house of his dreams as well, right? So it was like be a dream to build a house. And definitely by building a house, he is actually paying a tribute to his ancestors as well, to his parents as well, right? So that finally the efforts, right, the finally the efforts of his ancestors, his family, the kind of pain, suffering, and the kind of struggle he had in his life, the finally it is going to be ended, and they will be having a sense of belongingness. And on the other hand, land is very much important, right? So this is the reason that these land owning communities, right, they don't want to compromise with their land. And the very much prominent metaphor is land, right? Because it is the land that ultimately gives you belonging. This is the reason that two brothers are even able to kill each other, right? Though two brothers are even ready to kill each other on the name of land, right? Because it is all about the material, right? I have already told you, in order to have the mental construction, you will be having something physical at your hand, right? You would be having something tangible in your hand, right? So this is the reason that these land owning communities are obsessed with the land, right? I hope this is not too much heavy for you. And Shushmita, you are going in the same plane with me,
Yes, ma'am.
right? So these land owning communities, they have the obsession with the land, right? Because from the centuries, they are having land, they are having so much of their land, and their land is ultimately their identity, their land is ultimately giving them the guarantee of having a good position and possession in the society, and they ultimately belong to the land. So this would be also the reason that Patil was not able to digest this fact, that how could a Dalit will be having a land, right? A Dalit will be having a land in my land, right? How could be he having his own say, that too in my land, right? So this would be the reason. But on the other hand, for Bayaji, it would be a completely different construction, right? So Bayaji wants to build a house for the, first of all, as I have already told you, it could be an ideal utopian world. It would be a kind of a tribute to his ancestors, because if we trace the history, they will be living in very shabby conditions, and for them having a house, the four walls, the brick house, and that to the two-storied house, right? We were not talking about the simple house, we will be talking about the two-storied house, right? So the two-storied house is a kind of a whole utopia, right? It is a kind of a whole ideal structure that they will be having, and they felt that they will be having more than what they deserve, right? So this is what we should. And even Bayaji will be felt proud of what kind of a struggle he had, the kind of a livelihood he lived in the end of his life, right? So Bayaji was very much happy. And this, we were talking about the metaphorical construction of the house. But on the other hand, if we were talking about the serious concerns of the Bayajis, so Bayaji was actually having a big family, right? So they will be having a joint family. So it is very common that in the even when we study the family structure of the Dalits, so in Dalits, This is very common phenomena that only, one or two, three persons were earning, right? Not everybody was earning, and not everybody was earning sufficiently, right? I hope you agree with me,
Yes, ma'am.
right? So,
Yes.
right, so there is only biology, and there are a lot of people who are actually dependent on the biology, right? So there was a lot of people in the family. There was a big family, a joint family. So this was also the reason that he really wants to build a two-story house, right? Because of the lot of people in the family, he really wants to have a two-storied house, so there will not be much chaos in the house, and people will be having the adequate space, because there are a lot of people, and he knows it that a lot of people are depending on him, right? So this would be the reason, the ultimate, the motivation behind the construction of two-storied house is that he wants to have a, to have his whole family settle down in a one space, because they have a big, a big joint family, right? So this is the reason that he was be building the two-storied house. But they have, planning the things, and they even started the constructions, and even, everything was going smoothly. Then definitely the whole thing was, it has angered the Patel, right? So Patil was very much, disturbed about the construction of the house. So he was, thinking about that, what should be done, what should be done. He was, thinking about his, losing his grip over the village, that how he was having the maximum land, and how his house was the ultimate, reflection of his power. And on the other hand, there was a complete contrast between Bayaji and Patil, right? On the other hand, Bayaji was overjoyed. He was, happily, doing the things of his house, and even they were inviting them, right? When the house was completed, so there was a Griha Pravesh kind of a puja, right? So homecoming, so sorry, home welcoming, right? So home warming, your home welcoming, right? So there was a Griha Pravesh puja, and even Bayaji went to invite Patil as well, right? He really wanted Patil to come and come at his house, and bless him and his family, and congratulate him, and they will be having a progressive India. So in a way, we can say that Bayaji is actually the reflection of a progressive India, right? He is ultimately, showing us a ray of hope, right? So he is not at all a casteist like Patil. So, like for example, he is also asserting his control or power, that, like, see, I am also, coming at par with you, and I am also becoming equal with you. But on the other hand, Patil outrightly rejected the invitation, right? He said that, if the exact word, like, what if you are becoming the Buddhist, right? Do you really think so we will treat you equal, right? So they were actually saying that, "Ki you will be you will be lower castes only, you will be lower classes only, you will be untouchables only for us, right? Even though you are going away from us, even you are going to, join the Buddhism, and you are claiming that you are also having a god, you are also having a, savior, you are also having a leader, a god leader, right? So this was the construction, right? So, but on the other hand, Bayaji, he still, he was very warm towards Patil, because he really wants good for, his own things, and his own people. But, and on the other hand, when, doing the construction of the house, when we were talking about the house, the locality, the people, and the neighborhood was very much mattered, right? Because we don't want to, we don't want to, discount, put any discomfort to our neighbors, right? Because we know it very well that if we are living in this house, if we are living in the locality, so we cannot afford to put any discomfort to our neighbors, because we will be, needing our neighbors, or they will be needing us at any hour, right? So this would be the the whole construction of Bayaji. That is why he was very much warm towards Patil. Even he invited him again and again, that please, you should come to the ceremony, right? And the day came, the D-Day came, when they were actually doing the, you could say, the whole the ceremony. So the kind of the construction was that there were, the first, the house, and then there was the storied house, and there was the first floor. There was the, instead of, you know it very well that when a house was, constructed, so the very first thing that we do is the, the definitely remembering God, arti puja. And on the other hand, the very first thing that we put to our house is the definitely the ideal of the god, right? Definitely, in Hindus we used to have puja. In Sikhs we used to have part of the Guru Granth Sahib Ji. The first thing that I remember that comes to our house is the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, right? So Guru Granth Sahib Ji, we took Guru Granth Sahib Ji at home, and we have the part, and then we'll start living in the houses, right? But on the other hand, they belong to the Buddhist. They are following Buddhism. They belong to the Buddhist, right? So what they did is, so instead of putting any kind of idol, because they are against the idea of, they are rejecting Hinduism or any religion. So what they did is, they are actually putting the big portraits of, for example, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and the other personalities like that, right? For example, Namdev Desala, the Dalit Panthers, the Dalit organizations. So instead of, so it is very common for them, so the people, those who are actually, spoken for their rights, by he is able to construct a house because of the Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar. If Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar haven't spoken for their rights, haven't raised their voice, so he will be actually, he will be rotting in a in a muddy house, right? So this was the reason. So look at it, people actually, worship Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar as god, right? So he is actually, having the portraits of Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar on the first story, like for example, first story would be the ultimate abode of the god, right? So the highest, right? They really want to put Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar at the highest distance, right? At the highest height as well, right? Because they have such kind of a reverence and respect for the Bhim Rao Ambedkar. And what happened is, so they have all, say, they have made all the arrangements, and the ceremony was going on. And meanwhile, Patil came with Bahuja, right? So Patil and Bahuja, they both came to see the house. And Bayaji was very much overjoyed by seeing Patil, that finally, though Patil was, he was saying, though Patil was cursing, but on the other hand, neighbors are neighbors. So he showed the Patil around the house. He was showing the house, he was showing the drawing room, he was showing the first story, and the next, the second story, the two-story building, that such kind of a house I'm making. And on the other hand, but Patil was very much angry, right? So he was burning with anger from inside, that how could this man will be having such a large and lavish house, how this man will be having such a lavish structure, who was actually at a time he was a untouchable, right? So even their shadows were, you could say, even their shadows were not tolerated by the upper caste people. And now we have to live with these people, now we have to live with these people in the same locality, and will be having the same kind of a houses. So such kind of a construction, such, such mindset, such kind of the generational memory that Patil is carrying for, towards the lower caste people. So it actually, much angered him. So what he did is, so they went, and then they just simply said that now we are going. So they were doing, so now that Bayaji came downstairs, and now they were doing the all ceremony. The women are chanting the names of, Lord Buddha. They were doing few ceremonies. So they were, going, and people were all happy. The people, those who are actually, coming to the house of the Bayaji, and they were applauding the efforts of Bayaji, appreciating the house. And suddenly there comes the fire, right? So the people were sitting there, so there came the fire from the all the four corners of the house, right? And they will be surprised, and they will be totally shocked beyond their understanding, that what was actually happening to the house, what was actually, what the fire was all about, right? So that there was so much, people inside the house. They were, busy doing their ceremony party, and, singing and chanting. So they started running, right? Because the house was on fire, right? So it was set on fire. So it was very obvious that who has set fire on the house. So it was definitely Patil with the help of Bahuja, right? So it was Bahuja, the goon, the rascal. He put the, fire to the whole of the house, right? And because as it is very common at the command of the Patil, right? So everybody was running, outside, right, in order to escape from the fire. It was Bayaji. So you could think about what kind of a what kind of a mental condition Bayaji would be having, Shushmita. I would like to know your view. What would you be feeling if you would be at the place of Bayaji? I hope
I'll
I'm
be
audible.
totally, I'll be totally devastated, ma'am, because he has lost uh, everything.
Yes. this is what we can, I am also, when I was reading, I have read that story when I was in the 10th. I still remember that. This was the reason that the story is very close to my heart. I was in 10th class, and when my teacher, because we don't have that much kind of a, you could say, the leaps of technology that we can
Yes, ma'am.
simply go home and read the whole thing on online and on some from
Yes,
other
ma'am.
sources. So we children are waiting for the next day, right? And the teachers were so dramatic that time, right? So she was actually portraying, and when we got to know that, I still remember that most of the students, including me in the class, so we were shocked. And
Yes.
in the end, even our teacher commented that you were actually, you actually totally reacted like Bayaji. So that in order to, lighten the mood, in the end she said that.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I still remember her words, right? So same way, right? So even I was shocked when I got to know that what that person would be feeling, right? He was so overjoyed, and look at it, just, all his happiness just, it just went into the, thin air. That too because of the jealousy, and that too because of the caste construction, right? The a person who hasn't did anything wrong, right? Yet he suffers too much, right? So in the end, so look at it. But on the other hand, people were just, going outside, and they were just running away from the fire in order to rescue themselves, or to protect themselves. So here you could say that what would be a man would be feeling. Vayaji was totally, he was shocked, as he was devastated, he was totally, disturbed. And on the other hand, he was running here and there to save things, right? So in order to, what he would be reacting. And on the other hand, there was an incident. He quickly, he just went upstairs, right? He just went upstairs, and what he did, he was collecting the portraits of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and the other visionaries, right? So the portraits that were there of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and other, paint other Dalit activists. So he was just collecting the pictures. So look at it. So right. So he really don't want his God to suffer, right? So he really don't want. He was so grateful to those people. He was so, you could say, he was so much. Grateful and so much thankful to those people. He was so much, he paid a tribute to those people by building that house, by using all his money, and all his money, that the retirement money, the sumptuous amount that he would be having after the retirement, that was all invested in making the house. And it was just all set to the fire. And in the end, it was he was actually, running for the portraits, and nobody was actually caring for Bayaji, right? So as I have already told you, there was a, large big family. They were having a, the joint family. So they were actually saving the children, they were actually saving each other, right? So they were saving, a husband is actually looking after for the wife, and the wife is looking after for the children, right? So they forgot completely about the Bayaji, right? So it was, at the end of the moment, that they got to know that where is Bayaji, and they got to know that Bayaji was actually collecting portraits of the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and other people, the portraits that they hung on the first floor, right? And because of the first floor, he comes down to the second floor. So his whole body caught fire, right? So he was terribly burnt by the time he comes out of the house. And it was said that in the end he died, right? He died because of the, because half of his body was burning, because of all the, burns he had on his body. And in the end, just, as uh, narrator's grandfather, he had this wish that this poisoned bread will not, spoil the generations. The same way, Bayaji, in the end, he told his sons that, sons, please make a storied house for me, right? I really want you to make a storied house for me. That is my end desire, right? So that is all about the story. So on the other hand, there was, just you could say, the after a small episode was there, right? The people were actually accusing that what was the cause of the fire, what was the cause of the fire. So as you know it very well, that Patil belongs to a very, a powerful class and caste, right? And we have already talked about that, the same thing. But in Balbir Madhavpuria's novel, that the state was actually, taking advantage of the poor condition of the untouchables and the lower caste people. The same way, nobody will be harming the Patel. Nobody will be having the courage even to name Patel as the criminal, as the ultimate, as the accused, that he has put the whole thing on the fire. But on the other hand, they simply, they just simply wrapped up the case by saying that it was a patromax, it was a lantern, right? So there was a lantern, कि कोई लालटेन या कोई और कोई चीज थी around the house, that it caught fire because of the because of it, it is by accident and because of some kind of a mishappening, right? So it was, they totally look at it, see they totally act the, term the whole thing as the act of God. But on the other hand, uh, this is a very, could say, the story, it evokes our pathos, right? It evokes our pathos, that how badly they are treated, right? So the only thing, right, the only belongingness they have, he has invested all his money in the, you could say, in the house. He wants to, cherish the dream of the family. It was not to, challenge the power or the status of Patil. He just wants to have his happy family, happy structure in the storied house. And in the end, he was devoid of everything, right? Even he has to lose his life for that, right? So you could say that how much the casteism was inherited in the minds of the man, that they are even, as we have already talked about in the first story, that because of the casteism, that these people are even treated worse than the animals. And same, these people even suffer from death, right? They suffer from the loss of everything, whatever little they have. They deny the simple rights, the simple basic rights. And even if they are earning these rights, so they are even, they are losing the simple, very basic things, the deserving things that they have earned from their hard work and their labor. And they have to, they have to lose their life for that, right? The same case is the Vayaji, that in the end he simply said that my end desire is to build a storied house. So sons, please made a storied house in order to pay tribute to me. I hope this much is clear, Shushmita. Do you have any question?
No, ma'am. Ma'am, what if we compare both the stories?
Uh,
Uh,
okay. You want
there,
to compare? You want to ask that you are asking from the point of view of exam, or you just want to know my uh, view about it?
ma'am, both, because
Okay.
there is a question. Compare and contrast the two stories. These two stories from the point of view of their themes.
Okay.
The theme is same.
Definitely, the theme is same. The theme talks about the, the atrocities that, that have come, that have actually laden on the Dalit identity. On the other hand, the pain and sufferings that they, they had at the end of hands of the upper caste, right? So you can say that the one setting is definitely, the one setting, it talks about the completely a villagely setting. If you are talking about compare and contrast, so you compare and contrast, in which you are going to, withdraw a few similarities, and then you have to, give few differences. And in the end, in conclusion, you want to give a mixed answer, right? So this is what is it, because in the end we'll say that the both stories are actually, talking about the, destruction of the Dalit consciousness by the upper caste people, and how much,
Yes,
this
ma'am.
discrimination, the casteism is still very much there, right? So the similarities are definitely there because of the theme, because of the pain, the suffering is definitely same, right? And as I have already talked you, the bread and the land, right? The basic amenities, we will be concluding and tying them in the same knot, that even the basic necessities, they were not, demanding that they wanted to live with their live with them, live in their houses, or they are demanding, to have a say. They were just talking about the basic things, that is, we are already talked about, land, that is food, cloth, and shelter, right? So the man, the grandfather, was simply, demanding for the bread, right? And the
Yes,
here the man is simply demanding for the shelter. So look at it, these upper caste people, the casteism, they are even devoiding them, they are just depriving them, devoid of any of the basic minimal necessities, right? So this, because of this casteism, the lower caste people, they are unable to, they are unable to aware the basic necessities, right? They are unable to even fill their, minimum requirements of life, that is very much there for any kind of human being, right? Irrespective of caste, creed, and gender, or race, right? So these are the basic necessities that a human needs, but it will be devoid of them. They are depriving them just because they belong to the lower caste, right? So you will be quoting the same thing. And contrast, right? What kind of a contrast you see, Shishmita?
yes, ma'am.
Difference between these two stories, so we have already talked about the similarities, right? So how these characters, even you can talk about the same characters, and the contrast even can, but what is your point of view when we were talking about contrasting between these two stories?
Ma'am, one difference is that in poison bread, they are kind of laborers.
Yes.
But in the storied house, he was actually showing equality with the Patil by
Yes.
building the same storied house. So I
Okay.
see this is one of the major difference in both the stories.
Okay. Anything else? So,
In the poisoned bread, the the narrator raised the voice against Babu Patil.
okay, so basically, when we are contrasting these stories, so you can have 2 points. That first is definitely, you could say, the different settings, right? The first setting we will be having of the very rural India, right? It would be a setting of a village, the narrow space. But on the other hand, we will be talking in the second story. We will be having a talking different story, right? So it is a story of a, and though it is a story of, you could say, a village only, the village setting only, but it would be on the larger structure, right? So here, on the other hand, in the first story, they will be having the dominant servant relationship, but on the other hand, as you have already mentioned, that they are coming at par with each other, right? So here, Patil and Bayaji, they both are on the same plane
Yes.
because they are living in the because they are, they are living on the same economic condition. And on the other hand, the second
Yes.
contrast you could have, that in the first story, that they were simply the bonded laborers, right? They don't have literacy, they don't have education, they don't have any kind of economic support. But on the other hand, in the second story, we will be definitely having a ray of hope that the Dalits will be having, he's served enough as a government employee, he has much resources at the, you could say, at his hand, that he is able to build a house, the same house, a storied house, where he can actually, supply the minimum needs of his large family, his joint family. And he can actually, cherish the concept of family love and care. But on the other hand, you will conclude with the same thing, that though the settings are different, though, but on the other hand, the casteism, right? The casteist society, the casteist mindset that is inherent in the, that is actually like the germs in the Indian society, that is not going to lead you towards the progressive India, right? This is how you can end your story or conclude your question like that, right? I hope this much is
Yes.
clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, so tomorrow I just decided that we'll complete two more poems, but the time is over. So don't worry, tomorrow we'll start with the poems first, and then we'll move forward to the tribal literature. In the last lecture, we will be talking about few tribal stories, as you have already mentioned, Mashweta Devi. We will be talking about more of them in order to understand now the tribals, right? So tomorrow we will be studying about tribals. So we have talked enough about SCs, right? That is scheduled castes. And then we will be talking about tomorrow's STs, that will be scheduled tribes, right? So tomorrow we'll meet at the same time, Shushmita, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So till then, please read these stories, and definitely you will able to, have a better understanding of their characters and their motivations and the concerns that these two writers are trying to, portray in the story, right? I hope
Yes.
this will help you, right? All the best.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
जी सर, हो गया है आज का लेक्चर. हेलो
ठीक है
सर.
मैम, ठीक 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 है मैम,
जी,
ठीक है जी,
थैंक
ओके
यू.
ओके, थैंक यू.